Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. My name is Todd Coons and I'm not normally outside by the pool, but it is a beautiful evening and I can't resist. It's just gorgeous out here tonight. So I thought I would do my little video from out here because it kind of goes along with what I've been doing. I recently have been playing around with the Fuji 80mm macro lens. Now, I've put it on my X-T4. I rented this lens for the last few days from Spartan Photo Center. I'll put a link in the description to these guys. I've talked about them before. They are fabulous. Camera store here in South Carolina. If you are anywhere in the Spartanburg, South Carolina area, I highly suggest going in to see them. They are fantastic. I have rented the lens, the 80mm f2.8 macro lens for Fuji. It is on my list of lenses that I would very much like to purchase. So I took the opportunity the last few days to play around with it. I used it as a product lens. That is the biggest thing I want to do with this lens. I think it is the ideal studio product lens. But because I had this lens for a few days, I have been playing around in the backyard and around my house with it in its macro mode. This lens will do 1:1 magnification, which means you can get really tight with this lens. Now, a macro lens doesn't only do close-up photography. I think that's one of the misunderstandings that people have about macro lenses. They are a fabulous 80mm lens, which is a great portrait lens. You can do portrait photography with this. You don't have to only do close-up work with it. However, it does close-up work very well. And one of the things about a macro lens that I'm not sure everybody knows, macro lenses are some of the sharpest lenses made. That's what they're made for. They're made to be sharp corner to corner. So what I wanted to do with this lens was just take it out in the backyard, take a bunch of close-up photography and put it through its paces and see how it does. Now, before I show you a lot of photographs that I've taken over the last couple of days with this lens, let me tell you a couple of things. Number one, every photograph that I'm going to show you is full frame. I didn't crop in at all. They 100% full frame what the camera saw. I might do a little bit of retouching on them or a little exposure adjustment, but I did not do any cropping, just so you know. This is straight out of the camera. The other thing I want to show you is a couple of things on this lens. Right here, you've got a couple of little options when it comes to the lens, and I had to play with this a little bit to figure it out. I should have done a little research, but now obviously it's got the stabilization. You can either turn that on or you can turn that off. Whenever I was hand holding this, I had it on. If I had it on a tripod or a studio stand in the studio, which I did some product work with this, I had it off. Now, one of the things that is kind of interesting, and I don't know if you'll be able to hear this very well, although I think I've recorded it well, when you turn it on, it makes some noise. I don't know if you could hear it there, but I'll play it right now. Now, there's nothing wrong with that noise, and there's nothing wrong with the movement that you can feel in the lens. It's just a little odd for me. I've not had a lens that does that. So if that's new to you, it took a little bit of getting used to hear the lens making that noise, but the stabilization seemed to be really nice. Even though I was hand holding an 80mm lens on an APS-C size sensor, is a bit of a long lens, and it's easy to get camera shake. And that stabilization seemed to do a very nice job. Now, I will say that I did not shoot at low shutter speeds. You know, I was at 250 at the slowest. I was probably up in the 500 or 1000 range if I was getting in tight, knowing that camera shake is very easy to do. But the stabilization seemed to help a great deal. Now, the other little button to show you is this one that says full. There's three choices here: full, 0.5 meters to infinity, or 0.2 to 0.5 millimeters. Now by default, I think it was on 0.5 meters to infinity, and in order to get really close, I needed to switch it down to full. My understanding is 0.5 meters is as close as you can get if you're on that setting. So putting it down to full, I was able to get closer than half a meter, which would be what, 1.5 feet? So you're in closer than even a foot. You know, you can get really tight and still gain focus. So a couple little disclaimers about how to set that up. and the fact that all of my images were full frame. So as I'm showing you things, those are things to keep in mind. Like I said, this lens has been on my list of lenses I would like to purchase for quite a while. I mean, it's probably number one. This is my top lens that I would like to purchase and put in my arsenal. It just is the perfect product lens in the studio, and I do a lot of that kind of work. I do a lot of product work on location. I've done food photography for a restaurant here in town several times. This lens would probably be great for that kind of work. Fashion, portrait work, headshots, ideal. Perfect lens. But even though this is a lens that I really would like to purchase, I am questioning it a little bit now that I have it. It's big. It's a little bit bulky and heavy. That's not a huge red flag to me, but it's there. Do I need a lens of this weight to carry around a lot? The other thing is I don't need to be at 1:1 magnification very often. That's just not something that I do all that much. It's nice to have it if you need it, but as a product photographer, I'm not in that tight that often. Even if I'm shooting small things like jewelry or any number of things that you come in tight on, 1:1 magnification is not often something I need to do. Half magnification would probably be plenty. And this lens the last couple of days has kind of got me thinking. The $1,200 price tag it's hefty. It's not crazy expensive, but it's an expensive lens. And Fuji makes a 60mm macro that is about half the price. It's $650-ish, something like that. And I'd be very interested in using that lens to see if it meets the needs that I would have as well or better than this one. However, let me tell you one big pro about this lens. The 80mm is going to push you a little bit farther away from your subject than a 60mm. And that's very nice in the sense that if I am shooting product, I'm not like right on top of my product. You know, a lot of times as a product photographer, I've got to reach into the set and I've got to make adjustments and move things. I've got to put in fill cards, mirrors, whatever. And if I'm right on top of it because my lens focal length is shorter, I don't have a lot of room to do that. And you can paint yourself into a corner and make things a little bit tougher. So being back is definitely a plus, and a big plus. That's a big plus. So the longer focal length is kind of nice to be back. If you're doing headshots, rather than being right in somebody's face, it's kind of nice to be back a little bit. So as much as I'm a little bit torn by the size of this lens, the cost of this lens, that 80mm is really nice. Now, one thing I have to mention in terms of using this lens over the last couple of days that I noticed is the focusing. The focusing was a little bit frustrating. If I was using it as a portrait lens to do headshots or anything, you know, where I'm back a little ways, it focused as fast as any Fuji lens I've owned. No problems. If that's all I did with it, I wouldn't even think I'd mention the focus issues. But when it came to focusing in on something really close, definitely in tight, macro type photography, it surged a little bit and it was a little frustrating. If I had a flower as my subject, no problem. I was easily able to take the time, focus. I even put it on manual focus and would focus, and I could do it. But if it was a critter or a bug that was moving ever so slightly, it was very difficult to keep up with that bug because it would not focus and stay on. You know, maybe it would focus and the bug would move, and then I'd adjust and push halfway down again, and it would completely go out of focus, and it would jump around, and it was frustrating, to say the least. Now, I say all that, but I also know that if you are a macro photographer, the reality is you're probably not going that fast. Macro photography is probably a little more tedious, a little more slow, and anyway, it was a little frustrating if I needed it to go fast because it just wasn't going fast. So I guess the question, after several days of playing with this lens, is it still on my list of lenses to purchase, to put into my bag as a regular part of what I do for a living? I'd like to play with the 60 just to see, because for half price, $650 compared to $1,200 is a lot of money. But if you took money out of the equation, then yes, this would still be on my list, probably on the top of my list still, to put into my bag as a lens that I would use. It would probably be my #1 lens in the studio. It would be my #1 lens probably for portrait and fashion work on location. And it would probably live on my camera a lot. I really, really liked it. I just don't know if the couple of little things that I like better about it than what I think I would like on a 60mm macro is worth twice the price. I think the reality is that that's different for every photographer based on their needs, the top things that are their needs, and their budget. For me, maybe I'll just continue to rent it for a little bit, see how much I continue to like it, but I really did enjoy using the lens. It was fantastic, sharp as a tack. I mean, the images that I shot with it are just phenomenal. So it was certainly a success. I enjoyed using it, and like I said, I'll probably rent it again. So if you got comments or questions, if you got things to add, you know, to the whole macro world, I mean, it kind of has its own little set of rules and little nuances to it. So if you got anything to add, please do. I'd love to hear what you think. If you know this lens or you know the 60mm, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well. But as always, thank you guys for watching. As always, if you haven't subscribed, please do. I appreciate that, as always. If you'd leave me a thumbs up and a comment, that'd be great. And I hope your summer is going well. I hope everything is going well for you in terms of your photography. And if nothing else, maybe this inspired you a little bit. So you guys have a great day, and I will see you, as always, in the next video.